This will be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. You may be seated. I'll now allow the Secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 7, National Treasury Appropriation Bill.
Thank you. I now invite the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Nene.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, in presenting the National Treasury's budget vote for consideration of the House, allow me to begin with an update on the outcome of the 2014-15 budget. At the conclusion of the fiscal year, tax revenue was about 7.4 billion rands higher than the February estimate. We now estimate our consolidated revenue for 2014-15 to be 1,102 billion rands. That's 1.1 billion, 1.1 trillion. With a budget balance at 137 billion rands, or 3.5% of our gross domestic product, and 15 billion rands less than the February estimate. The South African Revenue Services continues to do sterling work in raising the resources that are required for the delivery of public services. However, economic growth remains lackluster. We cannot continue to expand service delivery on tax collections alone. Stronger economic performance has to be the foundation of our development and better public services. So it is right to emphasize that the National Development Plan sets the goals and provides the analysis for our medium-term strategic framework, which is given practical effect in the budgets and plans of every department and public entity. But it is not just what we do as government that counts in implementing the National Development Plan. Development is fundamentally about broadening participation in the economy, opening up opportunities for trade and social mobility, and mobilization of private investment. Much of the Treasury's work is focused on these larger objectives. So, for example, honorable members, we are strengthening regulation and oversight of our banking and financial services sector. On the one hand, to ensure that our financial institutions are well governed, and on the other hand, to ensure that customers are treated fairly. We've introduced tax incentives aimed at encouraging investment and technology and at expanding employment, especially of young work seekers. Through our City Support Program, we are working with metropolitan councils to accelerate housing and public transport investment, promote more efficient urban landscapes, and strengthen urban economic development. The Municipal Finance Improvement Program contributes to addressing financial management challenges in many of our municipalities. We have expanded the capital base of both the Development Bank of Southern Africa and the Land Bank to enhance their capacity to partner with other institutions in financing infrastructure investment and agricultural development. The Jobs Fund has launched its 5th call for proposals focused on partnering with business and non-governmental organizations involved in agricultural development and support for emerging farmers. The Treasury continues to work with other departments on a wide range of economic development initiatives, with the Department of Trade and Industry on manufacturing and competitive enhancement, with the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services on investment in broadband communications, with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, and of Rural Development and Land Reform on support for agricultural investment and employment. With the Department of Transport, we're working on moving people and goods more effectively, with the Department of Human Settlements on how to partner with banks in expanding housing investment and finance, with the Department of Energy on bringing independent power producers into the electricity network and addressing Eskom's financing requirements. These are just some examples, ladies and gentlemen and honorable members. Implementing the National Development Plan involves a very wide range of activities. We need to do more to reinforce partnerships with the private sector and all stakeholders in building a more inclusive economy. But as the NDP emphasizes, these activities need to be coordinated within a sustainable, long-term framework, but also for broader participation and for a more equal distribution of opportunities. Allow me, Chairperson and honorable members, to comment briefly on the economic outlook. The National Treasury forecast for economic growth in 2015 remains unchanged at 2%. This is partly a consequence of sluggish economic recovery. It also is a consequence of domestic constraints, including the continuing shortfall in our electricity generation capacity. Subdued business confidence, therefore, continues to hold back investment and growth. The Kagiso Purchasing Managers Index recently declined to 45.4%, which is its lowest level in 11 months, indicating the vulnerable state of our manufacturing sector. While the low oil prices are providing support to our economy, the fall in the prices of our export commodities such as platinum, coal, iron ore, and gold is putting pressure on our mining sector and related industries. This reduces the profitability of investments and limits the growth and employment potential of the sector. Over the period ahead, we are likely to see some upward pressure on inflation, partly because of a reduced maize harvest, higher electricity prices, and the weaker exchange rate. These are reminders that we must remain focused on the critical constraints holding back our economic progress: electricity supply, administrative capacity, especially at the local level, skills and access to globally competitive technology, transport and communication networks, and the effectiveness of our labor relations institutions. The National Development Plan also emphasizes our links with the rest of Africa. We have been reminded in recent weeks of how important cross-border linkages are to millions of vulnerable people, both in our own communities and across the Mediterranean. There are many aspects to these challenges which we have to address in our social development and employment strategies and in development partnerships with our neighbors and the international community. Our linkages with other African countries are growing, including investment by South African companies abroad, which increases job creation both at home and elsewhere in Africa. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to draw the attention of the House to National Treasury's central organizational goals for the next 5 years as set out in our strategic plan, which was tabled last month. These include: 1, promoting economic policy coherence around the objectives of growth and jobs. 2, addressing risks on the public sector balance sheet. 3, executing a credible budget, a budget process that allocates resources sustainably to policy priorities and is in line with spending plans. 4thly, exercising public finance management oversight responsibilities, including capacity building that delivers value for money. And the 5th one is making the financial sector serve South Africa better. The 6th being that of building a happy and effective institution that is a center of excellence. And the 7th, implementing a strategic communication and outreach program that addresses stakeholders. Our strategic plan notes 3 critical areas in which capacity is being enhanced within the Treasury over the period ahead. The first is that a new unit will be created to focus on the analysis of financial market conduct in line with our Twin Peak regulatory framework. The second one is within the Office of the Accountant General, dedicated capacity is being built to oversee and implement the integrated financial management system in partnership with the Department of Public Service and Administration and the State Information Technology Agency. The third area is that of following the establishment of the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, centralized coordination of procurement in government is being strengthened. Our strategic plan also draws attention to the establishment of the Government Technical Advisory Center as a public finance advisory and support initiative. This initiative works with other departments and provinces and municipalities on a wide range of organizational development and program management activities, including support for public-private partnerships, strengthening and the strengthening of operational capacity and learning networks focused on project management and local economic development. Administration of the Jobs Fund has also now been moved and consolidated into GTech. Details of the Treasury's programs, activities, targets, and performance indicators are set out in our annual performance plan, the APP. The departmental establishment for the current year comprises 1,153 posts. The National Treasury vote amounts to 27 billion rands this year, of which compensation of employees is 725 million rands. The Treasury also has the responsibility for the provincial equitable share and debt service direct charges, which amounts to 382.7 billion rands and 126.4 billion rands, respectively. Time, Honorable Chairperson, does not permit me to deal with all these plans and programs in detail, but honorable members have had the luxury and the benefit of looking at these documents, and I would want to believe that they are now familiar with them. But let me highlight a few key issues. A notable turning point has actually been achieved, Honorable Chair and members, in the financial position of Limpopo Province, where we had instituted an intervention under Section 101B. This was necessitated by a precarious fiscal situation, including the province's inability to finance a bank overdraft of 1.7 billion rands in December 2011, and accumulated unauthorized expenditure and departmental debts of 2.7 billion rands. Large departments such as education and health had been overspending their budgets continuously since 2007 and 2008, and the number of unpaid invoices from service providers had reached in excess of 2 billion rands. As we speak, Executive and Accounting Authority has now been handed back to the provincial government, and national government administrators are no longer in the province. But we continue to issue directives under Section 101A and receiving reports in terms of this section of the Constitution. Turning to municipal debt to Eskom, which is one of the recent interventions to address municipal debt to Eskom, is similarly achieving positive results. Equitable share transfers were withheld this year in respect of 59 municipalities with long-standing area obligations to Eskom. In 20 municipalities already, agreements have now been reached to enable the equitable share funds to be released. Discussions are in progress with the remaining municipal councils with a view of resolving outstanding matters before the end of the municipal financial year by 30 June this year. Turning to the city support program, cities, ladies and gentlemen, and honorable members, play a key role in driving economic growth and providing people with access to services and opportunities. To realize these benefits, cities must grow in ways that reverse the pattern of urban sprawl that sees new communities, and especially poor communities, located far from central business districts. It also requires substantial investment in the urban infrastructure required to provide services and support growth. Planning these investments is a formidable task for cities, and so we have introduced the City Support Program to assist cities to plan and implement these investments. This program already coordinates and supports the process through which cities identify areas of strategic investment in their built environment performance plans. Detailed planning for individual projects is then supported through a project preparation facility managed at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. This support helps cities to develop implementation-ready plans for developments that will change the face of our cities and support long-term growth and development. National Treasury is also working with the Department of Cooperative Governance to support the capacity of our cities to raise the funding needed to attract private investment for urban infrastructure expansions. In our meeting with Minister Gordon and the executive mayors of the metros, we reaffirmed our shared commitment to ongoing improvements to governance and service delivery in metropolitan areas in particular, so that population growth in our cities can provide momentum to reconstructing more inclusive, productive, and sustainable urban environments. Our city leaders have committed to focusing their attention on the security of supply of critical urban services through enhanced maintenance and renewal of critical infrastructure, and to reorient their expenditure priorities to contain growth in personnel costs, reduce waste, and obtain clean audits. Building on their own built environment plans, they will also accelerate the preparation of a series of well-located catalytic land development projects that will be implemented in partnership with the private sector. Turning to the African Bank, I can report here today that good progress has been made towards establishing the new African Bank. Yesterday, as members would recall, the National Assembly passed the Bank's Amendment Bill, which will provide the legal authority required to transfer identified good assets to a new bank, while enabling the curator to proceed with winding up of the remaining business. In addition, a new Chief Executive Officer has also been appointed, bringing appropriate expertise, experience, and stability to the leadership of a revitalized bank. In its deliberations on this matter, the House yesterday again highlighted concerns with unsecured lending and the pressures on many households associated with inappropriate expensive credit. Cabinet has already agreed to a range of measures in response to this issue, including new regulations on reckless lending. In taking this forward, we have had the advantage of constructive support of the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Trade and Industry. In addition to exercising general oversight of state-owned companies, the National Treasury has specific responsibilities relating to the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the Land Bank, and the South African Airways. On the DBSA shortly, the DBSA aims to disburse 17.8 billion rands in 2015-16, rising to 26.4 billion rands in 17-18, contributing to municipal infrastructure investment, public-private partnerships, and regional development in the energy, transport, water, communications, health, and education sectors. Of special importance is the bank's support for addressing infrastructure backlogs in our city, which I have alluded to, and deepening the municipal debt market in order to facilitate greater private investment in urban renewal. The DBSA also coordinates implementation of the Rural Infrastructure Strategic Program of the National Infrastructure Plan. This year will see the Land Bank undergoing an organizational review aimed at strengthening its role in agriculture financing. It plans to disburse over 2.2 billion rands in new development loans over the next 3 years, while supporting better coordination between agriculture initiatives, rural development, and land reform. In respect of South African Airways, we are now seeing the benefits in the cost reductions and improved operational efficiencies associated with the board's 90-day plan undertaken in the first 3 months of the tenure of this year. This provides a platform for refining the 2013 long-term turnaround strategy, and a strong working relationship has been established between the airline and the National Treasury, and we are confident that we will see further improvements in the airline's financial position. Turning to the new development bank, Honorable Chair and members, I'm delighted to report that there is good progress in establishing the BRICS-led new development bank. This month, the bank will announce its pre-management group, comprising a president for the bank from India and 4 vice presidents from other BRICS member countries, including ourselves. In the interim board of trustees has been appointed to oversee the operationalization of the bank, with respect to the ratification process. Agreements that were signed last year at the summit in Fortaleza and the contingent reserve arrangements are currently before Parliament for ratification. Once they are ratified, South Africa will be able to participate fully in these new initiatives. I hope that Parliament will be able to ratify these agreements before the end of May, and that the bank will be ready for business in time for the BRICS summit, which will take place in Russia in July this year. Turning to competitive effectiveness, Honorable Chair and members, as emphasized in our budget review this year, Treasury works closely with several other departments in promoting the medium-term strategic framework objectives associated with economic growth, employment creation, and infrastructure network investments. Tax measures to support industrial investment amount to 19 billion rands a year. Economic competitiveness is also advanced through various spending programs, including the Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Program of the Department of Trade and Industry. Recent press reports have drawn attention to the growth in applications for this support. The Treasury will work with the colleagues in trade and industry to expedite implementation of the incentive program and determine its cash flow requirements while ensuring value for money in these targeted appropriations. As part of our continuing strengthening of public finance management, revised Treasury regulations will be published by 31 July this year to take effect on the 1st of April 2016. This follows an extensive process of consultation with departments and entities. The new regulations contain a number of important reforms in areas such as procurement and governance, areas in which government's performance has not been completely up to standard.
Honorable Minister, please round up. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, I would have also dealt with the issue of Social Security and National Health Insurance and our public wage negotiations, where I would want to advise the House that progress is being made in this regard, and we emphasize the fact that we need a settlement that is fair and reasonable, that takes into account the overall position of the fiscus and the broader economy, and an appropriate balance between remuneration and employment creation. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. But let me also take this opportunity to thank the committee for having worked and the constructive engagement on the strategic and annual performance plan that we have had with the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We now call on the chairperson of the committee, Honorable Karim.
Madam Chair, comrades, friends. Well, my name is Yunus and it's gender neutral, so I think it's appropriate in my case. So here we are, 10 months later, beyond our last budget vote, in more difficult, more challenging times. So the pressure on National Treasury has increased since last year's debate. But not just National Treasury, our standing committee too, and this Parliament as a whole, and indeed civil society stakeholders, especially business and labor, and the public more generally too. More immediately, it means too that the National Treasury needs to be more rigorous than it's otherwise been, and it has been very rigorous actually, in the use of how its budget is spent. But more importantly, I see at least one minister here of tourism, other departments, to the extent you can oversee them, obviously, Minister. I know it's difficult, but it's Treasury that has the most proficient skills in this regard, and in particular we're concerned about the way budgets are used by public entities that get funds from the national fiscus, and of course, while recognizing there are 3 distinct spheres of government, also provinces and local government too. But we as a committee also need to be far more rigorous in what we do. Our reports, for example, our budget vote report, our BRRR report, our fiscal framework and other reports have to be more concrete, more specific, more focused, more outcomes driven. With our budget report, we need to look far more carefully at the outcomes that the department sets for each of its programs, the allocation of budgets to them. This means too adequate research and support staff. And this is something that we plead with the management. I noticed the chair of the House chair here. Hopefully she too will take some lesson from this. We really need more resources and more support to play the role the Constitution requires of us. Now, in this input, I'll focus mainly, as I do as a chair, on the report. Not wholly on it, but mainly on it. The report's been tabled in the ATC this morning. I'll deal with some key issues. But in the first instance, Minister, we'd like to say we share largely the sensible people in our committee, and they're the vast majority, the strat plan that you have. The goals are clear, and we really think that National Treasury on the whole is performing well under difficult circumstances. And so our view is that the strat plan is largely correct. But obviously, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, as you'll agree, we need to engage and refine the strat plan. You two are doing it on your own way. We too need to engage with you to do it, to help towards that end. And I think the main point I'm making in my initial input is that it's not enough, as we've said repeatedly, for us to focus on the executive and say, hey, Why haven't you done what you should be doing? Without looking at us as Parliament, what are we doing? What are we doing to actually ensure that we are more rigorous and vigorous and effective in our oversight? What are we doing to ensure that we engage with the popular communities out there and actually bring to this Parliament their needs and concerns and aspirations and engage with our departments and the ministers in our respective portfolios around these issues? So it's only half the story to criticize the executive all the time. We should also be self-critical. Are we doing anywhere near what the Constitution requires us to do and what we should be doing? Now, in our report, we noted, Minister, that the challenging economic circumstances in which you brought the budget and your own department's budget to us some 4 weeks ago. And we feel that National Treasury has been forced to make a significant adjustment in terms of its fiscal policy stance, and we understand that. Low economic growth, high debt service costs have put huge pressures on National Treasury, and the committee will, through its review of National Treasury's quarterly reports, and the first of them comes next Tuesday, DG, more actively to monitor its performance in these more challenging times. In your interest, we are more effective and rigorous as well, Minister. Compared to last year, there's a greater synergy we see between the National Development Plan and the department structure of its budget. And this is to be welcomed. Interestingly, though, Minister, in another debate yesterday, Member Des van Rooyen raised this issue flowing from our report on the Stats South Africa. Stats South Africa interestingly said that the key performance indicators for the medium-term strategic framework and the National Development Plan don't wholly coincide. It says there are far fewer indicators for the medium-term strategic framework than there are for the NDP. And our committee said, fine, because it's the first 5-year medium-term strategic framework, that's understandable. But, we'll expect government to make its next medium-term strategic framework more consonant with the indicators in the NDP. And we said to him, raise it with the minister in the presidency, and I was mandated as a chair to raise it, and perhaps you want to applaud even before I say this, but I've already done that. Within 24 hours of the report being published, or frankly, even before it was published this morning, I engaged with the minister of the presidency, and I see Des van Rooyen smiling approvingly, because I'm answerable to the whip of the ANC, so to retain my position as a chair, politics, chairperson, very fragile, you never know where you'll be tomorrow morning, so I have to impress the whip. But in any case, what I want to say is that I really think that the minister, that the statistician general actually was quite good in what he said. Maybe he's got it wrong here and there, we don't know. But overall, I think what he's saying made sense to the committee. But we also understand why the MTSF won't fully cover all the indicators. But it's something we need to pursue. And not just the minister in the presidency, with a very long title, which I can't remember right now. It's planning, performance, what is it? Planning, performance, evaluation, monitoring, and administration. I hope he gets paid more than all the other ministers, Minister Hanekom, but having that title, wow. Okay, so here we are. We're saying that we raised during the report, Madam Chair, this issue of ESCOM at the time. Severe crisis, the chairperson was being threatened, 4 people had, his position was being threatened, 4 people had exited and so on. But we pleaded with the minister. We understand that our department is only one in a war room, but we pleaded that, to quote the words of the report, that Treasury should play its fully effective role in Cabinet's war room, led by the Deputy President that's dealing with the challenges confronting ESCOM. We also said the committee believes that government is not managing its communication on the energy challenges well, and that National Treasury needs to raise this matter effectively in meetings of the war room. Then we noted that the minister is going to bring to Parliament, obviously to the Appropriations Committee, but we want Parliament, the appropriations bill, the special appropriations bill, to give the first tranche, I think, of 9 billion rands of the 23 billion that's allocated to ESCOM. And we said, please bring it reasonably early in May so that Parliament can process it in time for the June deadline that the minister has set for this task. We also drew attention to what we said in last year's report, that of course we understand that you have to forego non-core strategic assets. And what we said last year was we have to be very clear about the criteria that is used to define what is a non-strategic asset and the terms of any sales of these. National Treasury also needs to seek to ensure that the sale of these non-strategic assets do not lead to job losses or other unintended consequences that can undermine the country's economic growth and developmental goals. And we think this is something, Minister, that it serves the government's interest, Parliament's interest, the people's interest, that some consideration, if not due considerable consideration, be given to. The committee also notes the strengthening of government's financial management by accelerating the deployment, to use the National Treasury's many words, of the integrated financial systems to all government departments. We really think this is long overdue, Minister. I'm sure you'll agree. We welcome it. We will monitor this very carefully, because this has been on the agenda for many years, and it's long overdue. And we understand the difficulties, Minister, that the department has had, but as a committee, we have to engage with you and the department and see to it that we can help in whatever we can. Then we most welcome the 1st of April launch of the Central Supplies Database and a single supply chain management policy for all procurement government institutions, and welcome the e-tender publication portal, and we think that's absolutely great. Within 6 months, we want sort of report backs on progress. We noticed also Dr. Makosi Kosa from previous position in Salga drew to our attention that they had far too many pension funds, not an easy matter to deal with. We don't think it can be done overnight, but we would like some attention by National Treasury to be given to that. Then we welcome BRICS. I won't cover that. The Minister has covered it. We think, Minister, that it's crucially important to quote what the committee says. The committee believes that the new development bank should over time operate with a far more developmental and inequality reducing approach than the World Bank and the IMF, and recommends that National Treasury should, taking into account all the sensitivities, seeks to ensure this. We called for greater, I'll skip this one. Point 12 in our report spoke about the Property Rates Act, how it applies in traditional authority areas, and the fact that it's not fair that people with huge properties in communal land are not paying property rates. That's a matter that's sensitive, we understand, but together with COCTA, we need to address that issue. On the South African Revenue Service, we recognize the challenges SARS will confront in these difficult economic times, and we will obviously engage with them and be more rigorous, as they would have to be in our respective roles in this regard, in monitoring progress. We welcome the significant improvements in taxpayer compliance over the past few years. We noted the commitment SARS has made to modernizing its programs, and we're going to consider that in 6 months' time. We also feel that far more has to be done to empower the South African Revenue Service to deal with base erosion and profit shifting. In fact, our 3 committees, Trade and Industry, Minerals, and ourselves have set the 20th of this month to consider a report from the Parliamentary Budget Office and a report from the Trade and Industry, which has had public hearings on this matter. Minister, it's one parliament. The very same stakeholders are now saying they want to appear before our committee. We said, no, it's one parliament. And the 3 committees are going to work together in this regard. And we're going to come to you, Minister, in the second half of the year with some proposals in that regard. And in fact, you yourself and the Ministry and the Treasury has been doing a lot on this issue in any case, in a variety of ways. But all of us agree we have to do more. And needless to say, that's something that we can work on cooperatively. We need a report on the Davis Tax Committee. We'll arrange that shortly. And we also, of course, noted that, well, I'll skip this because time's running out. I don't even know how much of time have I got left, Chairperson? Because, how long is it? Oh, right, okay. Yeah, Minister, I think you should sponsor a clock here. You know, the cost of a clock, how much can it be? Just to put a clock here. Given the cost that Parliament bears every day, maybe we can have less cakes and less tea and less coffee 5 times a day. Put a clock here, please. Okay, and you can name it after me, the Karim clock. I don't see why we can't have a clock here. Okay, on an important issue, we're concerned as a committee about the divisions within SARS, okay? And we noted that the Intelligence Committee is dealing with the intelligence aspects of the Skakane report, the Kroon Commission, and so on. We will deal, we said, I'm noting this is a committee decision, we will deal with the consequences of the exit of senior managers of SARS on the performance and operation. We said that while recognizing the complexities, the committee believes that there should be an amicable settlement of the divisions. And we're pleased to hear that this afternoon, it seems, some sort of settlement has been arrived at, and presumably this will emerge more in the next day or so. So we welcome that. We think those
Unfortunately, your time has expired.
Can I finally thank the Minister, Deputy Minister? And I was going to talk about the Freedom Charter, but there wasn't time.
Honorable members, we don't have the clocks that we are used to in this venue, so I rely on the table to give me time. Thank you. Honorable George, take the debate forward.
Thank you, Chairperson. Less than a year ago, I congratulated the Minister and Deputy Minister on their appointments. I did have great expectations of them. Our economy has not recovered from the Great Recession that followed the global financial crisis, unlike other developing economies. And our unemployment rate, now at 36.1%, continues to climb. Our youth unemployment is a staggering 66%. With economic growth projected at 2% and steadily falling business confidence, this presents significant risk to our social stability. Recent attacks on peaceful migrants to our country reflect the anger of those unemployed and marginalized as a direct result of a hopelessly failed, incoherent economic policy. We need only look at the growing social unrest to know that government has failed the people with its unworkable so-called developmental state model that prescribes the central role for government in our economy. The DA agrees that government must intervene when the market fails and provide a safety net for vulnerable members of our society. Government can drive economic growth under the right circumstances. We have demonstrated this in the Western Cape, where investor confidence, especially in the key financial and manufacturing sectors, remains high. A government that wastes over 30 billion rand per annum and permits the construction of a monument to corruption at Nkandla without any consequence to those who stole the people's money is not trustworthy and is incapable of performing a central role in our economy. In its current corruption-riddled and broken condition, government is crowding out the economic growth potential of our economy and getting in the way of any possible recovery that is now already long overdue. The Treasury has responsibility to ensure that the regulatory environment of the state-owned enterprises is effective. It should be clear by now that from the meltdown at Eskom and the never-ending bailouts to SAA, that the model for state-owned enterprises has failed dismally. Executives receive enormous pay packages and bonuses, yet fail to deliver the services that the so-called enterprise was established to provide. Minister, what are you doing differently to resolve this problem before the lights go out permanently? Where are the non-strategic assets for sale? Scopa reports year after year that departments and entities have wastefully and irregularly spent billions of rands of the people's money. Nobody gets prosecuted, nobody goes to jail, and the cycle just repeats as the looters move from one department to the next. There isn't much left to steal. The larder is empty, everything has been eaten. Our deficit continues to widen and the tax rate goes up. This model too is not sustainable. Last year, I asked the minister to explain why the SARS commissioner post had been vacant for a year, and now we know why. Someone had to be found who could bring the organization to the heel of its political masters, who are reluctant to pay their taxes, such as President Zuma, who owes SARS at least 16 million rand in fringe benefits tax for the upgrades to his palace at Nkandla. Enter Tom Moyani, who has depleted the executive ranks of SARS to the point where our tax collection capacity is at risk. Once the envy of other tax jurisdictions, SARS' domestic and international reputation lies in tatters. There was never any secret that SARS maintained the capacity of to investigate tax evaders who steal billions from the people. It is now claimed that hundreds of millions were spent on a so-called rogue unit with funds that were never accounted for. If this is true, previous audit results from SARS are unreliable and invalid, and the Auditor General has failed. Minister, did SARS also steal the people's money to pay for this unit? The sad tale of yet another broken state institution began when Tom Moyani suspended the Deputy Commissioner Ivan Pillay under the pretext of findings of the so-called Sikhakhane report. It was Ivan Pillay who commissioned the Sikhakhane report, and Tom Moyani first told Parliament that the report was inconclusive. SARS refused my Promotion of Access to Information Act application to obtain sight of the report and insulted Parliament by informing MPs that we were not ready to see it. The Sikhakhane report recommended a judicial inquiry into the SARS matter. The President refused to establish a commission for obvious reasons, and then the so-called Kroon report corroborated Tom Moyani's version without interviewing those involved and almost purely on the basis of the Sikhakhane report that was previously inconclusive and focused mainly on the actions of an individual member of the unit. The saga continues with the committee chairperson hiding a letter from the committee that he received from former SARS spokesperson of 11 years, Adrian Lackay, before the committee met with Tom Moyani and thus impacted negatively on the committee's
Honourable
ability to
George.
interact with Tom
Honourable
Moyani.
George. Honourable member, what's your point of order? Honourable member,
Point of order.
honourable member, that is not a point of order. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam House Chair. It goes further than that.
Are you raising on a point
I'm
of
rising on a
order?
point of order. It's
Please say.
unparliamentary to say that another member of the House is telling a lie. I'd ask that you ask the Honourable Chairperson of the Finance Committee to withdraw that.
Honorable Karim, please stand. There's a point of order. You referred to Honorable George as a liar. Can you withdraw that?
If the rules
Honourable-
require me to withdraw it,
Honourable
I withdraw
Karim.
it. Right. But he's misrepresenting the facts.
Honorable
He's
George.
misrepresenting the facts.
Honorable Karim, let's deal with this on the other processes. But the mere fact of calling another member a liar in this house is unparliamentary. Thank you. Continue, Honorable George.
Thank you, Chairperson. Today we read that Ivan Pillay and Peter Richer have resigned from SARS, no doubt with a handsome golden handshake to ensure their silence. This reveals the extraordinary lengths that the ANC will take to cover up the political infection of SARS, one of the key financial institutions in our economy. The failure of the African Bank has highlighted the very slow pace of regulatory reform following the 2008 global financial crisis. Where is the tangible progress on the Twin Peaks regulatory framework? We have fallen behind the curve in the global financial regulatory environment. Retirement reform initiated more than a decade ago remains in limbo and has resulted in significant uncertainty in the industry. This is not in the best interest of pension fund members who right now are confused and distrustful of the policymakers. Government must never forget that it does not have any money of its own. It all belongs to the people. No matter how much money is poured into a broken system, it remains broken. When I arrived in Parliament in 2008, I felt deeply honored to be here at the point in our history where there's much debate in our society about the alternative economic routes that we can follow. I hoped that we could choose one that grew our economy. That was not to be. Minister, urgent action is needed to liberate our economy from the stranglehold of incoherent economic policy, financial mismanagement of gigantic proportions, and now the collapse at SARS. The time we had before has now run out, and those great expectations appear likely to remain just that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Karim. We now invite Honorable Shivambu to continue with the debate.
Thank you, Chairperson. Earlier there was a failed prediction that I'm going to speak about base erosion and transfer pricing. I'm not going to do so because in trade and industry, that issue is getting the necessary attention. Afterward, family raised it, and there's a process that we're engaging in there. But of concern, Minister, is that when we visited the Reserve Bank, they seemed to be unaware of what we said on the 25th of February, that they're working together with the Financial Intelligence Center and SARS to deal with illicit financial flows. They are unaware. They say they don't have a mandate in terms of dealing with those issues. So I don't know what we're talking on behalf of, because the Reserve Bank seems to have distanced itself from yourself. I want to speak, though, about 4 principal issues. I don't want to go into the mechanical issues of internal squabbles and everything. Number 1 will be the issue of the misguided belief in the markets, in the invisible hands. I mean, it's wrong. The invisible hands can never grow an economy, can never take you anywhere. And that is what made you yesterday to wrongfully and mistakenly pass the bank's amendment bill, which ultimately is going to end up in private hands, but now with a secured and guaranteed soft lending. So we are saying to the bank executives that do anything you want to do with the bank. You can engage in unethical lending, but when your bank collapses, you are going to be curated, you're going to be saved by the Reserve Bank, by the Treasury, and everything else. Even in your own capitalist world and ideology, businesses that do not perform properly, they are allowed to collapse. But in your case, we passed the law that says that banks have got a soft lending. And that is a seed for a crisis in the future. The second principle that we want to deal with is the issue of your misdirected belief in economic growth first and the rest shall follow. That is not how economies are grown. We've made a plea many times that go and study how all economies in the world have developed to be where they are now.
the US, the UK, Belgium, France, Germany, Finland, all of them played a critical and central role. There was a visible hand, and that visible hand was strategic ownership and control. Why, for instance, there wasn't an intervention of the Freedom Charter with regards to the African Bank Limited? Because the Freedom Charter says that the banks, the monopoly industries, and mines shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. And by the way, the liberation movement interpreted that to say it must be nationalization of banks. You had an opportunity to do so politically, but you never did it. We don't know why. You are under wrong guidance, and it must be exposed like that. The third principle I want to deal with is on the procurement process. You're establishing the office of the Procure General or Procurement General or something like that.
Honorable
Someone who's
member,
responsible.
would you please address me and stop talking directly to the minister as you and you are, please?
Now, your own elections manifesto says that 75% of goods and services that are consumed by government in the state should be locally produced. Is that the case? No. The cars, the clothes, the food, the microphone I'm speaking to, all of them are produced in other parts of the world. The cell phones that you use, everything else is not procured locally. There's no direction, there's no legislation that says that you must procure locally produced goods and services. Despite that, you have lied to the people of South Africa that you're going to procure 75% of the goods and services locally. There should be something about that. You need to deal with micro issues
Honorable
in
member,
that fashion.
unfortunately, your time has expired.
The last principle I wanted to deal with is a
Honorable
division of
member,
revenue
your
process, which
time has
you need to look
expired,
into. And then,
please.
but yeah,
Honorable
we'll
member,
assist you, sure.
please. Honorable Nkomo, ungachubeka ma.
Thank you very much, Madam. The IFP takes note that South Africa's national government finances and efficiency and sustainable public financial management are key to the promotion of economic development, good governance, social progress, and a rising standard of living for all South Africans. In accordance with the above mandate, Treasury, through SARS, has the inevitable task of the collection and then the fair, equitable distribution, monitoring, and oversight of fiscal monies according to government's priorities. SARS recently advised that despite difficult economic conditions, they had collected 986.4 billion rands, which is a 9.6 growth in total revenue from 2013-14 and is 7.4 billion rands above the revised estimate announced in the February 2015 budget, and this must be commended. SARS also states that this revenue performance was made possible by an extraordinary drive by them on compliance improvement, which in aggregate aided about 22 billion rands to state coffers. Whilst this is all well and good, there still remain billions of rands in vettable income that goes or which is unaccounted for, especially in our informal trading sector. Minister, on a recent visit to the Crown Mines area in Johannesburg, which I did, I actually saw multitudes of informal shopping malls and shops mostly owned and managed by Chinese nationals. The malls are run on a cash basis and goods traded without any receipts of VAT paid whatsoever. How much money does the state lose in vettable income to this kind of trading, which seems to be permitted? Why is it that these malls and shops are exempt from paying VAT or taxes? The robust collection performance from SARS is expected to make a positive impact on the fiscal framework. Yet there is no agency concerning the collection of these billions of unpaid VAT. On the spending and distribution, we still see large underspending, misspending and corruption by departments, which lead to service delivery failures, and the resultant in the end is these widespread protest actions. Fiscal policy, integrity, and long-term economic growth and employment creation are paramount. We can ill afford the opportunity cost of finite fiscal resources while misused or not being used at all, and call on Treasury to maintain the most vigilant oversight in this respect, for it is only in this way that we will ensure a strong and economic, vibrant South Africa for future generations. The IFP definitely supports budget vote 7. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nkomo. We now call on the Deputy Minister of Finance to take the debate forward.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, the National Treasury contributes not just to value for money in our public finances, but also to the broader financial environment that supports investment and growth. I will highlight the key roles of several institutions of the wider finance family in bringing together savers, investors, lenders, borrowers in an orderly manner. The role of the financial sector in facilitating economic development in modern economy is critical and probably well documented. But its destructive force, if it is not well regulated, its destructive force, if it is not well regulated, should never be underplayed. In fulfilling this important role, there are various policy challenges for government which have to be carefully balanced. For example, the need to facilitate financial access while ensuring that consumers are protected. The need to combat financial crime whilst ensuring that honest customers are not excessively burdened with compliance. The need to ensure that financial entities are always financially sound to meet their commitment to their customers, whilst also noting the compliance cost associated with new regulations. In our effort to fulfill the above objectives and to adopt best international practice where appropriate, several draft legislations were released over the past year for public comment. These include the Financial Sector Regulation Bill 2014 to give effect to the Twin Peaks regulatory model, the Insurance Bill 2015 to support the financial soundness of our insurance companies and enable low-income access to insurance, and the Financial Intelligence Center Act Amendment Bill to strengthen the Financial Intelligence Center's ability to assist combating of financial crime. We've also prioritized the need to encourage South Africans to save and thereby to rely less on excessive debt, especially debt offered on expensive and sometimes predatory terms. Over-indebtedness, honorable members, makes our workforce depressed and less productive. On March 1st, 2015, the tax-free savings account became a reality in South Africa. We encourage South Africans to take up this offer. This saving initiative also reflects what can be achieved if both government and the financial sector work together for a common cause. The 2015 budget speech reiterated National Treasury's commitment to continue with the retirement reforms, to ensure that workers are saving enough and get good value for their saving. We repeat our message that workers, especially government employees, should not panic and prematurely resign to access their saving. Their saving remains theirs under the stewardship of the trustees. In fulfilling the above objectives, honorable members, the National Treasury rely on a couple of various regulatory and supportive institutions within the family. The rest, I will want to focus on some of the institutions, in particular, the Financial Intelligence Center. Can I start with the Financial Intelligence Center? The Financial Intelligence Center plays a critical role in protecting the integrity of our financial system. During the past year, the FIC, in collaboration with National Treasury, worked on a draft Financial Intelligence Center Amendment Act Bill 2015, which has been published for public comment after being approved by Cabinet. South Africa has a long-standing commitment to combating money laundering and the funding of terrorism, having ratified the United Nations Convention Against Corruption in 2004, after joining the Multilateral Financial Action Task Team in 2003. In 2001, South Africa enacted the Financial Intelligence Center Act and other related measures to criminalize financial crimes and facilitate access to information about illicit financial flows. Financial crimes take several forms. For example, fraud, money laundering, terror financing, and corruption. In fighting such crimes, we aggressively seek to protect the integrity of our domestic financial institutions and contribute to the resilience of the global financial system. Cabinet adopted this policy objective in 2011 in responding to the 2008 global financial crisis, as outlined in the policy document, A Safer Financial Sector to Serve South Africa Better. Moreover, the intelligence products from the FIC are increasingly being used by law enforcement agencies, intelligence, SARS, and many other agencies. The FIC Amendment Bill proposes several measures to address threats associated with money laundering and terrorism financing and address regulatory gaps which have emerged since the Act was last updated. It introduces major shifts which seek to make complying with the Act easier for customers of financial products, whilst maintaining the controls necessary to protect the integrity of our financial system. Being FICAD will no longer be the frustration it has been in the past. It will become easier for all concerned. The bill introduces a risk-based approach to give financial institutions flexibility to work out how best they can verify their clients' identity. South Africa has long recognized the problem of illicit financial flows. And I know some members here tend to think that it's their own discovery. We started taking strong steps to try and deal with this issue long before it became fashionable to talk about it. This can be seen from the routine work of South African Revenue Service, the South African Reserve Bank, Finance Intelligence Center, and Prosecuting Authority. We will take up Honorable Chivambo's point later, because I think there's a bit of mixed guidance there. Whilst there are various mechanisms that are used to facilitate such illegal capital flows, like trade mispricing, money laundering, drug trafficking, corruption, we believe that aggressive tax avoidance and evasion probably form the most significant part of such illicit flows. This was one of the reasons why the former Minister of Finance appointed a tax revenue committee chaired by Judge Davis to improve the tax system and reduce the scope of tax avoidance and evasion. Judge Davis and his committee have already produced a report to deal with the problem of base erosion and profit shifting. The problem of illicit flows within Africa requires Africa-wide coordination and cooperation. But this is a global problem, and it also requires globally coordinated action. South Africa strongly supports and is therefore part of actions by Africa Tax Administration Forum and a number of other global agencies. Therefore, much as we have to do a lot of work as South Africans, we must also recognize that collaborations with other jurisdictions is critical in this regard. Can I briefly talk about the South African Revenue Service, SARS? The global economic and domestic and economic environment continue to put at risk to revenue collection and compliance goals. Despite all this, I think the performance is well documented. SARS performance recently announced is well documented. What probably should be said, it flies against the assumption that SARS is in chaos and is collapsing. Probably the performance proves the contrary, that indeed SARS remains focused in its core business of revenue generation and tax collection. But we also need to add that some of the initiatives that have been taken to date to deal with the challenges in SARS are beginning to bear fruits. Our focus is ensuring that SARS remains stable and focused on its core business of revenue collection. And indeed, if you read the results correctly and the facts, they point to the fact that we are succeeding in that regard. We also, you would see that also SARS is also focused on profit shifting schemes used by multinational entities and high net worth individuals to avoid or reduce tax liabilities in South Africa. SARS will also participate in and implement multi-country exchange information agreements to enhance efforts in this regard. SARS efforts to improve trade facilitation will also be enhanced by the implementation of new customs control and customs duty acts during 2015-2016 year. This will have many benefits for traders, importers, and exporters. SARS will also continue in its efforts to reduce the compliance burden for small business operating in South Africa through its continued rollout of small business desks throughout the country. I stress the fact again that unlike, contrary to what seems to be circulating and being pushed by some members in this House, SARS is focused on its core business and succeeding in doing its work. With regards to FSB, probably one point needs to be made that the process of transition, preparation for transition to Market Conduct Authority in terms of Twin Peak is well underway, and FSB is focused in this regard. Can I turn to financing of development? Because within the Treasury, we have three institutions that particularly focus on financing development: the Land Bank, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and Public Investment Corporation. I will briefly probably touch on a couple of points on the DBSA because the Minister has already said a lot on the matter. Over the next 3 years, the DBSA will seek to increase investments to sectors such as energy, transport and logistics, water, ICT, health and education by significantly increasing its infrastructure financing support, contributing to municipal lending. State-owned enterprises will also be financed and in their infrastructure plan, and regional lending as well will be increased in the coming year. Given the country's current energy supply challenges and constraints, the DBSA will continue to its investment in power generation projects, including renewable energy, as well as coal and gas-fired power sources. Key initiatives to be supported over the medium term include small projects independent power producers program, as well as continuing with the independent power producers coal-based program. The DBSA actively supports infrastructure development in municipality, and I would say that the Minister covered this area quite well. Probably key 2 points need to be made in this regard. The fact that in addition to increasing its investment in infrastructure, DBSA will also be setting aside annually 30 million for project origination, because we realize that in many instances, projects don't come to light because many municipalities don't have the finance for project preparation. We'll also be rolling out about 150 million in interest subsidies for selected municipalities. As part of the bank's project preparation activity, the DBSA will continue to manage the Infrastructure and Investment Program for South Africa, IPSA program, on behalf of National Treasury and the European Union. The IPSA facility was concluded with EU in 2013-2014 financial year, unlocking about 100 million euro for project preparation over a 7-year period. It is estimated that a leverage effect of at least 5 to 10 times the amount of financial non-refundable contribution could be achieved. In line with government's objectives to progress to low carbon sustainable economy, DBSA will continue with the 800 million Green Fund, which remains very crucial in supporting and focusing on high quality, high impact, job creation, green economy projects around the country. Briefly on the Public Investment Corporation, the Public Investment Corporation currently has assets under management of approximately 1.8 trillion. The key strategic focus area for the PRC is to invest in sectors and industries that are aligned to government economic activities as encapsulated in the National Development Plan, but also ensuring that you create value for those it holds the resources for. The PIC's investment strategy is focused on developmental investment across sectors. This includes economic infrastructure such as roads, ports, water and telecommunication, renewable energy, support to ESCOM, and many other areas that will be announced. So we wanted to stress.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much.
The time has expired. Siyobiza manje ilunga elihloniphekileyo ubaba uFiltani.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, members. I must acknowledge that I'm not a member of this committee. I don't want people to be surprised as to where I come from. I'm here on behalf of Honorable Kwangwa, who is not around today. The United Democratic Movement, as a matter of principle and for practical reasons, does support the budget. We support fully the attitude of the committee with regards to the urgent need to resolve the internal divisions that are widely reported to the public within SARS. And we do this regardless of the fact that one of them has actually exited today, because his very exit could very well be the beginning of a new cycle of problems. In support of the significance of the role of the National Treasury in the Cabinet War Room on ESCOM, we further wish to emphasize the need to ensure that bailouts do not become the order of the day. They drain the national fiscus. Let's find another way of resolving these problems. Otherwise, people will artificially create problems, knowing that I'll be bailed out in millions. The strengthening of government financial management, acceleration of deployment of the integrated financial systems to all government departments should be considered for all spheres of government, in particular the local government sphere. They need that. Sharing of expertise through skilling, recruitment and retention should also accommodate the local government spheres of government as well as the provincial level. They need the service. We welcome the recommendation by State South Africa for a statewide statistical reform, and we believe this process will also address the absence of suitably qualified officials with a background in statistics with specific emphasis on local government again. In addition to the creation of greater synergy across the three spheres of government, we believe that the role of community-based structures like traditional institutions will make the work of State South Africa easy and accurate with figures. We will welcome and appreciate voting district and ward-based statistical information that can help local government to develop voting district and ward-based development plans in the context of integrated development plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Likota.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, members of the House, according to the 2015 ENE, government is instituting, quote, carefully selected tax measures, which must mean increasing taxes. And secondly, realigning expenditure in response to the closing of the fiscal space. That must, of course, amount to reducing government services this year. Furthermore, debt service costs have now soared to 126.44 billion rand. That is a massive slice of the budget taken away. And according to this document, the purpose of this vote is to support economic growth and development, good governance, social progress, and rising living standards. This is supposed to happen through proper management of public finances and effective financial regulation of the economy. Yet the departments, most notoriously Public Works, routinely bypass the Public Finance Management Act. The Auditor General laments that there are no consequences for futile and fruitless expenditure. And yet the ruling party doesn't take action on this matter. We are therefore taking part in a costly charade. There are no consequences for looters, only heavy consequences for taxpayers. Many officials are scoring, but citizens are losing out in a big way. The net loan debt has shot up from 32% of GDP in 2011-2012 to 42.5% in 2015-2016. Why and how did we incur such a massive debt? According to this document, government borrowed heavily to achieve decent employment through inclusive economic growth. This is all smoke and mirror. The money is gone, but the jobs never came. Government has dashed the hopes of 4 out of 10 people in our country. It has also put the burden of the debt on the next generation. Where did the money go to? Where also is the counter-cyclical impact of the borrowing? Where is the infrastructure that resulted from the borrowing? These are questions to which we need answers. South African taxpayers, whom the government has taken for a big ride to now, must prepare for a scary slingshot. Slingshot ride as government will squeeze harder. In respect of our financial accounting and supply chain management systems, the department asked for a budget to implement an efficient, effective, and development-oriented public service.
Honorable Member, I'm afraid your time has expired.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Chair, I'm not Malema.
I'm calling upon Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we know, South Africa's economy depreciated and decelerated markedly last year due to negative impact of the domestic demands, labor strikes, and the power supply shortages. And as the Minister indicated, recent data has shown that the economy struggled to gain momentum in the first quarter of this year and derive benefits from low oil prices. These were offset with our electricity supply constraints. Now, power shortages was raised in the committee, and we in the ACDP share the concerns raised about Eskom and its impact on economic growth targets. We believe that whilst it doesn't resort under National Treasury, it should play some role in the Cabinet's war room that is dealing with Eskom's challenges. And of course, the unprotected strikes at Medupi is further aggravating the situation and requires urgent intervention. It is shocking that Medupi may not reach full capacity until 2020, and that is some 7 years late. And this will not only impact economic growth, but will also result in at least 3 billion rands in penalties to coal supply Exxaro over the next 3 years. However, we do wish to commend National Treasury in other areas, such as its decision to withhold the distribution of municipalities' equitable revenue share. Minister, that is a positive development, as this will then hopefully ensure that municipal debt, including 4 billion to Eskom and 3.6 billion to various water boards, is raised and paid. And we also welcome the support to municipalities with budget preparation and proper revenue forecasting. Non-payment for services hobbles providers, and this results in service delivery protests. We also believe that some of the issues at SARS are concerning, and we would trust that golden handshakes aren't given, and with the result that many of the issues are not dealt with, and we trust the chairperson indicating that these issues will be dealt with both in the Standing Committee on Finance and in Intelligence. There are issues which are of concern, but again, we need to commend SARS for its targets that were reached, and we trust that obviously the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, and we will see whether SARS reaches its targets again for this year, and we trust that the implementation of the new electronic systems will assist in that. We see taxpayers filed more than 99% of their returns electronically, so there is a lot of good things also being done. So we wish, in conclusion, to commend National Treasury for its work that has been done, and we also are grateful that the gallery is empty and that a lot of money hasn't been spent on bringing a lot of officials down here, and maybe other departments need to follow your good example in saving the costs of bringing officials down. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Van Rooyen.
Yabonga Sihlalo. Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, colleagues and comrades, National Treasury team. In this year that we in the ANC declared as the year of the Freedom Charter and Unity in Action to advance economic freedom, allow me, Chairperson, as an acknowledgement to the role played by Mkhonto Wesizwe in the struggle for the liberation of our beloved country, dedicate my submission to the budget vote 7, too many as combatants of MK, who 21 years in our hard-fought freedom are still struggling to make ends meet. One of the key facets of ANC conceptualization of a developmental state is a sustained development based on high growth rates, properly structured economy, and inclusive growth. As part of our transition from apartheid to a national democratic society, working together with our government, we need to ensure that economic growth is accelerated and the program of economic transformation is intensified. Hence, as the ANC, we will forever be committed to building an integrated and growing economy from which all South Africans can benefit. We will continue to advocate and support government programs meant to eliminate economic dualism and exclusion. To give effect to this, ANC resolved that the National Infrastructure Plan should be used as an instrument to change the structure of the economy and apartheid spatial distortions. It should also be used to support beneficiation and industrialization, as well as to contribute to facilitating intra-Africa trade. Honorable Chairperson, despite the weak economic conditions alluded to by Comrade Eunice, our committee chairperson, budgetary commitments made through this budget vote 2014-2015 has made it possible for the public infrastructure program to reduce constraints to growth. I will cite some few examples. Transnet's 7-year, 310 billion capital investment program is currently creating jobs for our people, but also it is modernizing the freight logistic network so as to be the best, but also to be the competitive service provider. As a result of this intervention, 60 trains now run daily between Durban and Johannesburg, compared with fewer than 20 a decade ago. I think in Gutule, that is service delivery. Maybe those who are obsessed with semantics will agree with me that this can also qualify to be classified as part of our radical transformation approach. The stated ANC resolution will further be realized in this budget vote because it commits funding to telecommunications investment in the construction and upgrading of fiber optic and mobile networks, and the introduction of municipal Wi-Fi, which will boost information access and affordability. Faster, cheaper, and more accessible broadband is critical to support small business and overall competitiveness. Chairperson, in the 26th of June 1995, our forebears resolved that the state should recognize the right and duty of all to work. Through this budget vote commitment, over 1 million jobs of varying durations were created in the year 2013-2014. To date, the Jobs Fund has created 30,701 permanent jobs and trained 75,163 job seekers. Just between August and December 2014, over 484,000 young workers were employed as a result of the employment tax incentive. Interventions in clothing, footwear, textiles sector made it possible for new production and clustering system, and this enabled most firms to respond flexibly with short lead times to local and foreign demand. Such changes could boost job creation quite substantially. In pursuance of our elders' clarion call on opening the doors of learning and culture, the ANC resolved that all mud schools should be eradicated. Underpinning these resolutions, among other things, was an understanding that expanding education is key to developing the skills required in the modern economy. Through the commitment of this budget vote, over the past 3 years, 92 new schools have been built as part of the Accelerated School Infrastructure Development Initiative. And well-known and well-documented development, 2 new universities opened their doors last year. We are raising all these achievements to indicate to the doomsayers that as we approve this budget vote in the last financial year, we were very clear as the ANC on which of our resolutions should be realized. Contrary to some misinformation peddled by others in this House, we are not giving a blank check to the ministry. We are now confirming to the House and the nation that what has been realized, and of course, in which areas should we improve. ANC welcomes the budgetary undertaking of spending 2.8 billion rands for neighborhood development planning projects. This will assist over the medium term municipalities to develop more inclusive and productive built environments. But also, integrated city development projects are provided for. Inter alia, we expect municipalities to use their allocations to encourage developments that help us to do away with apartheid spatial development patterns that are very costly to our people. As ANC, we resolved that we will continue to strive for macroeconomic balances that support industrialization and are biased toward job creation and ensure long-term stability and sustainable economy. Central to that resolution is the need for our macroeconomic policy to counter economic volatility. In this regard, the budget vote before this House makes commitment to allocate resources to a directorate that will focus specifically on analyzing financial market conduct in line with the Twin Peaks model of regulating the financial sector. I think the minister touched on this point. With all the lessons learned from the recent global financial crisis, I hope we will all agree on the importance of these steps. It will go a long way in ensuring that as a country, we are ready for any economic shock. In our last elective conference, we noted as the ANC that despite all noble interventions made by our government, many former Umkhonto we Sizwe members remain destitute, unemployed, poor, and do not receive much assistance from the state. And most importantly, some of these former members were demobilized from the Defense Force with little safety nets for their survival. We therefore resolve that there should be programs to uplift these former members. In responding to this resolution, Program 7 of this budget vote before the House, military pensions and other benefits will be receiving 821.8 million of the 3.96 billion allocated to this problem. That simply says 207% of the program budget. We hope that this will help to ameliorate former MK members' conditions. As much as we welcome this appropriation, we are equally aware of the AG's concern on financial mismanagement irregularities by the Department of Military Veterans. We call on MPs serving in the relevant parliamentary committees and the minister and her deputy to ensure that every cent of the appropriate amount reaches the intended beneficiaries. Of course, we will be working with them. In conclusion, Chair, as indicated by our committee chair, this budget vote comprised of commitments responding to the most of the challenges faced by our people. Not supporting it is tantamount to abandoning our mandate as public representative. Mokgatlo wa batho, ANC, o ikamanya le go tshegetsa tekanyetso kabo ena e ya bosupa. Ke a leboga modulasetulo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Minister indicated his concern with regards to our low growth that got stalled at 2%. And of course, we share that concern. The Minister also indicated the shortfall in electricity as a huge constraint to economic growth. And that is, of course, problematic. But the Minister, in terms of addressing the ESCOM funding requirement, only mentioned the increased tariffs as an option and also increased IPPs as a viable option with regards to this. Madam Chair, I believe that we should put our full effort with regards to alternative funding in this regard, how we can fund the ESCOM problems, and I would like that we discuss this more thoroughly. Because it is noted with concern when South Africa's economic growth forecast was cut to 2% this year by the IMF, that the IMF also cited electricity constraints as one of the biggest impediments to growth in the economy, and it's important that we give our full attention to this. The Standing Committee of Finance has given their attention to this to a certain extent and was concerned about the divisions in ESCOM, divisions everywhere, but in ESCOM also. And the committee further believed that National Treasury should play a fully more effective role in the Cabinet's war room. Now that is very important, and that is led by the Deputy President that is dealing with the challenges confronting ESCOM. Now with regards to the funding crisis, the war room has not made any pronouncements, and I believe that there should be proactive interaction from our committee with the war room, and that was also a proposal of the committee. Currently, ESCOM finds itself in a funding crisis, struggling to fund the completion of future generating plants, maintenance and operational costs. And the concern is that we have to fund a 230 billion black hole that will require the attention of government. Now, the first option to plug this 230 billion black hole is a hike in electricity price tariffs. We believe this is unsustainable, Minister, and if tariffs are hiked, mining, manufacturing and transport will bear the largest output losses. We have to be cognizant of that. The electricity cost in the mining sector makes up 30% of the total input cost, and that will render the mining sector with no profit cover. Those are serious concerns. The implications of low economic growth is intensified by South Africa's electricity crisis, as the prospect is that the NERSA might be forced to open the multi-year price determination, which is currently 8%, to increase electricity prices to 25%. Now, it's estimated, if it's increased by 15 to 25% tariff hikes, that it will cost the economy about 10 to 16 billion in terms of revenue for the fiscus. Chairperson, this implies that if the GDP growth will perhaps then dwindle to 1.6% instead of the 2% of the IMF predictions. Now, this will have a huge impact on our growth forecast. So the hike in electricity prices, I believe, should be avoided if possible. Now, the second option that could be addressed is with regards to increased state guarantees. Now, the DA has long called that we should not increase state guarantees, as it will have a serious impact on the contingent liabilities of the fiscus. Now, currently, if the contingent liabilities are included in the debt to GDP ratios, it will amount to a staggering 57% of GDP. That is far too high, and I believe this option is not a viable option. Therefore, to make a concrete proposal, I believe the third option in this regard, which the DA has long called for, is the implementation of an alternative new build funding model that will be fair to customers and could downplay the severity of this funding crisis. The funding model is based, of course, on increased competition. This increases efficiency and productivity, and it curtails political interference. The Minister has indicated the IPPs. Of course, it's a very important aspect. We agree with that. But we note that the generally accepted business practice is that capital projects should be funded by way of share capital, long-term loans, and the bond markets. And I believe that the War Room has made some progress in this, but the details are scant. We would like to have more details with this. With regards to share capital, a more sustainable solution would be to partly privatize the company by issuing shares on the JSE, as they are recognized internationally as a valuable acquisition currency. Chris Logan from Opportune Investments indicates investors could be allowed to buy equity in Eskom. That's just proposals. Logan proposes 30% of Eskom should be made available in new shares, resulting in direct cash injections into Eskom. That's privatization, partly privatization. Another option is access to long-term loans, and in this regard, I was delighted. I was delighted when the World Bank affirmed the support of the Eskom Investment Support Project, which was necessitated by delays in the new build project. But it's unfortunate that we don't have any further details in this regard. We don't have details with regards to the alternative funding model. We urge Treasury to investigate and to close the current state with regards to the commitment by the World Bank on the funding of Eskom. And we note, of course, our fiscal constraints, which will make debt a little bit more expensive. The War Room should be clear on this. And with regards to the BRIC Bank that was mentioned, of course it's a step in the right direction, but I believe we are still in the founding stages, as the ministers indicate. Now, with regards to the bond market, Minister, and this is very interesting, Chairperson, South Africa should follow the example set by fellow African countries, such as Senegal, Zambia, and Nigeria, who have already issued international sovereign bonds for infrastructure development in the last 5 years, and there is more to follow. Chairperson, our fiscal space, as everybody knows, shrank considerably during 2012, and we need to transform our economy into providing jobs and inclusive growth. The developmental model, as my colleague Dr. George has indicated, in driving the economy has failed. The DA has always advocated for the privatization of electricity supply generation and the unbundling of Eskom supply monopoly. In this regard, of course, people in the energy are working on the ESMO bill. It has been long stalled at a certain desk. Let us see if we can have that implemented. It would hugely be beneficial to our economy. It would take financial pressure off the state by getting private investors to help fund electricity supply provision. The damage to confidence has begun, Madam Chair, and the silence on South Africa's energy reform is not helpful. It's common knowledge that infrastructure constraints does hamper economic growth, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Kekana.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister Nene and Deputy Minister Jonas, the Chairperson of the Standing Committee and my colleagues, Team Treasury. Chair, I think it is important for me to put the record straight on issues that have been raised by honorable members from the opposition. To Honorable George, I think you have more reasons to be optimistic about the Minister and the Deputy Minister because they continue to do good work under harsh economic circumstances. So there's no reason for you not to keep on congratulating them. The issue of Eskom, Honorable Chair, honorable members will recall that when the ANC government came into power, one of the priorities that we looked at was access to basic services. And that includes electricity. And the expansions of electricity infrastructure are a priority of the ANC government. And that is why, even now, the issue of attending to challenges of Eskom are top on the agenda of the ANC government. And that's why Mr. Brian Molefe has been deployed to also deal with some of the challenges that ESCOM is faced with. And we are confident that he is equal to the task and he'll be able to do that. Honorable Chair, I don't understand why Honorable George is so obsessed in finding fault in the new SARS commissioner. And I don't want to reduce this issue to have racial connotations. But I think I would appeal to Honorable George to give him chance to perform, because he's not even 12 months old in that institution. And for your information, Honorable George, for SARS to be a world-class institution, it is because of the ANC-led government. Today, you cannot compare the capacity of SARS to any other institution, and it is this ANC-led government that was able to do and deliver. So the DA must do an honorable thing and give credit to the ANC, because we deserve that. Coming through to the Sekakane report, Honorable Chair, I have to set the record straight. The issue came to the attention of the committee, and the ANC, being a democratic organization, that also takes place in our committee. Very transparent, very democratic. The issue came to the attention of the committee, and all of us participated, and we agreed unilaterally to say, let this issue be dealt with. We agreed, all of us, not unilaterally. Thank you so much. Unanimously. Yeah, it's not my mother tongue. We agreed unanimously to say, let this issue come back to the committee after all other things, including the Kroon Commission, is concluded. The DA agreed with us in that meeting. And for the DA today to come here and be disingenuous, it's not fair to the committee. On the issue of the Lakay report, even there, the chairperson brought it to the attention of all of us and indicated that this matter will be referred to the committee on intelligence. Even all other engagements, whether telephonic or whatever, these matters were brought to our attention and we were able to deal with that. That's how transparent and democratic this ANC government, including our chairperson and the standing committee, was able to. So you don't come here and become disingenuous on some of this matter and want to grandstand. The amendment of the Banks Act, Honorable Chair, it's unfortunate that the honorable member from the EFF is corresponding with this committee and not consistent in attending. And in between, he will miss out on other things. It is not about creating a soft landing for banks. It is not about creating a soft landing for banks, by the way. And don't confuse the 7 billion rand guarantee by SARB as a bailout. For your information, the new good bank has been established with the private banks investment. It's about 10 billion rand, which ABSA, Standard Bank, Investec, Capitec, PIC, and many others are participating. So the private sector is actually bailing itself out. So that is there as a guarantee, and it will still go back. It is not done at the expense of taxpayers. So be consistent with this committee, and you'll have facts, and as you talk, you'll be talking from an informed position. Honorable Chair, At the core of the ANC's economic mandate is the transformation of the economy for inclusive growth. At the heart of radical economic transformation is the need for coordinated interventions in a number of sectors to fundamentally alter the structure of the South African economy. This requires the effective state that is decisive in its pursuit of structural change. The core structural weaknesses of South Africa's economy is our continued incorporation into the global division of labor as a producer and exporter of primary commodities and importer of value-added products. Where the GDP has exceeded 5%, it was driven by the now ended commodity boom and by debt-fueled consumption, leading to unsustainable levels of household debt. Structural transformation must accelerate industrialization towards a growth path driven by productive sector investment. Key economic priorities for government in the short term include sustaining and expanding the public infrastructure program, with particular emphasis on ensuring that key infrastructure programs are more effectively linked to industrial policy goals, including beneficiation, local manufacturing, and regional integration. These are the programs of the ANC-led government. So producing locally and doing all those things is an agenda set by the ANC, Honorable Shivambu. And this is a program that we are talking to. Explore greater opportunities to co-financing with other stakeholders, including the DFIs, institutional investors, and retirement industry, and catalyzing private sector resources behind infrastructure development. The National Treasury budget vote should be assessed against what is contained in the ANC-inspired medium-term strategic framework, which guides government program over the 2014-2019 period, but equally instructs the National Treasury where revenue should be allocated. In addition to 2014 ANC 5-year election manifesto forms the policy program against which the performance of National Treasury can be measured. With regard to the centrality of infrastructure in economic development, Chair, South Africa needs to invest in a strong network of economic infrastructure designed to support the country's medium and long-term economic and social objective. The medium-term strategic framework, the MTSF 2014-2019, moves the country towards an inclusive and dynamic economy, but requires that the country should urgently launch the virtuous cycle that allows it to move to a new growth trajectory. The emphasis on absorbing the unemployed into economic activity and higher mining exports to forge a new path in the economy of the future implies urgent investment in rail, water, and energy infrastructure, alongside regulatory reforms that provide policy certainty. At the same time, the private sector should commit more investment to supplier industries for the infrastructure program and in general economic capacity. The 2015-16 budget highlights a number of key important commitments by the government over the medium term in line with what is contained in the ANC's election manifesto. The 2012 Mangaung Conference of the ANC reiterated our commitment to the Freedom Charter and improved service delivery for the poor. As a result, the government continues to fund and support a number of key strategic projects that are aimed at moving South Africa forward and changing the lives of our people. Honorable Minister, you have shown on this program of infrastructure investment and the NDP that government will support the development of infrastructure in economically integrated cities and communities. And this will be done by National Treasury through providing subsidies, technical assistance, and training for infrastructure planning and development. The support is channeled through the Neighborhood Development Partnership Grant, the Integrated Cities Development Grant, and the Infrastructure Development Improvement Program. Steps have been taken by the current administration in placing infrastructure at the forefront of government's agenda to transform the economy and stimulate economic growth and job creation. And in September 2011, the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, PICC, was inaugurated, bringing key ministers, premiers, and metro mayors for the first time into a joint forum to promote infrastructure coordination and decision-making, headed by the President, Comrade Jacob Zuma, and assisted by the Deputy President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. And the support initiative enhances infrastructure delivery and improve lives of our people. Honorable Minister, you have spoken at length about the ESCOM debt and the improvement thereof by municipalities. The call we are making as this committee, Honorable Minister, is that there are departments that are owing municipalities rates and taxes. That should also improve so that municipalities too can be able to raise own revenue and be able to develop accordingly.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time has expired.
Yo.
Honorable Minister.
ANC support this budget.
Honorable Minister, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to all the members that have participated in this debate as we table today our budget vote. I also would want to take this opportunity just to confirm that unless we have other interests and other agendas, all the initiatives that we have taken to restore the integrity of the South African Revenue Services have been paying dividends. If anybody were to listen to Honorable George speaking here, you indeed would believe that when you walk into SARS, you will find a desk outside, everybody running out, and there is just no institution. Contrary, as the DM was saying, the organization is solid, and we've done everything in our power, and as we have indicated, we just need to work with the committee in order to sustain the work that is continuing, unless we have other interests. But I can assure you, no amount of political posturing and grandstanding is going to destroy that organization. We will work together with this committee and make sure that that institution continues to stand on its feet, and we're making good progress. You know, the Honorable George says that he asked a question why the commissioner has not been appointed. He then says that we were waiting for somebody from the mountain. I mean, honestly, Honorable George, you ask a question why the commissioner has not been appointed. When the commissioner is appointed, then you have a problem with the appointment of the commissioner. What exactly do you want? It's not clear, Honorable Chair, through you, what some members actually have. He says our developmental model is failing. It's precisely because he doesn't want a developmental agenda, because it addresses the challenges that were brought about by apartheid. And when you address them, we know that there are people who actually feel the pain, because we are actually inflicting the pain on them whilst we are actually releasing the rest of South Africa out of bondage. It was interesting to see that Honorable Shibambu, without transfer pricing in the speech, he is left with nothing. So, so indeed, there absolutely was nothing. A little bit of kindergarten politics there and there, invisible hand versus the visible hand. Honestly, I would be wasting time even. The only thing he said was that we should have allowed the African Bank to fail, so that the pension funds money that is in that bank to the tune of 40 billion goes down the drain. We salvaged it, and we actually still feel that it was the best thing we could do for the country and those pensioners. We're making good progress, and again, even there, no amount of posturing will actually take that away from our performance.
Order. Do you know we?
Can you?
I don't know. Like I left the.
Is it a point of order, Honorable Member?
It's on order.
A point of order.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We left Honorable Kekane speak there with lots of ignorance, and the ministers continue on the
Please,
same line.
that's not a point of order. It's not a point of order.
Because I think we need to have a
Honorable
mechanism
member.
where we clarify
Not a point of
utter
order.
ignorance and semi-literacy
Honorable
in terms
member,
of some of these
it's not a
issues,
point of
because
order, please.
we have the time
It's
to
not a
educate,
point of
you know.
order.
But if the ignorance continues like this, it's so sad,
Honorable
particularly
member.
if it comes from government officials.
Honorable member.
So can we please be
Please,
allowed to
honorable
clarify
members,
some
can
of
you,
these issues?
honorable member, it's not a point of
Because
order.
it's
Can
pure,
you sit
pure
down?
ignorance. It's so sad.
Honorable member,
It's so sad.
can you sit down? It's not a point of order. Continue.
You should be very grateful to this democracy that allows you space to demonstrate the tendencies you are demonstrating. But indeed, he said we should have allowed the bank to fail. And what we did, in his view, was actually just to...
Order, Chairperson.
And if that is ignorance, then
Order,
it
Chair.
came from him.
Honorable
I
member.
just
Point of order.
repeated what he said.
Honorable Minister, is that, what's the point of order, Honorable Minister?
The point of
The next-
order is
then-
that I'm from the
next
podium
point,
there.
the next point I
Please.
want to make.
But can I be allowed to speak and then the
Honorable-
minister
No.
must?
It's not
I'm
a
raising
point of order.
No.
Can you sit down, Honorable
anymore.
member?
And
Can
can I
you
raise a
sit?
point of order before I sit down?
Can you sit, Honorable member?
But if the rules do not allow for someone to deliberately misrepresent you, according to the rules, I said there
Honorable
that
member.
why don't we take
Honorable
strategic
member.
ownership of the bank?
Honorable,
As is called for in
you
the
don't-
Freedom
that's
Charter,
not a
not
point
allow
of
them to
order.
collapse.
You can't debate
That is
here.
what we made
The
the point
minister-
of.
Honorable member,
This semi-literate Treasury or Minister of Finance
can you
is
sit down, Honorable
misrepresenting what we
member?
said here.
We are
That is why it's
degenerating
never led
to something
anywhere.
that we don't want. Can you please sit down, Honorable member?
You allow him to misrepresent what we said here.
Honorable
That is
member,
why he has never been elected.
this
He
is not-
relies
this is not
on
a point
patronage
of
because he's
order.
from KwaZulu-Natal.
It's not a point
Then
of
we must
order.
listen to a
Sit
person
down.
who speaks foolish things here.
Sit down, Honorable member.
Aye.
It's not a point of order.
If Parliament means that
Can
we
you
must
sit
agree to
down?
nonsense, we must then sit down. We can't sit down just because people are speaking nonsense.
This is
Please.
not a point of order. Can you sit down, Honorable member? Can you continue, Honorable
Chairperson.
Honorable members,
very
can we
much.
have order?
Thank you.
Can we have order, Honorable members,
Thank
so
you.
that the minister
Thank you very
proceeds?
much, Chairperson. I think
Order,
I'm
Chairperson.
convinced.
What point of order are you calling upon?
Chairperson, according to the rules book, Rule 64, a member is allowed to stand up and explain when he is distorted in the House.
Honorable member, you are out
Yes.
of order.
I'm not out of order, I'm standing on the
Because
rules. He is allowed to stand up and explain himself if he is distorted in the House.
Honorable
He is
member,
allowed to.
Can you
That's
sit?
the rules of this House.
Can you sit,
We
Honorable member?
cannot pronounce the rules and interpret them the way we
He
want
needs,
to.
any
He is
member
allowed to.
needs the permission of the chair to say whatever he or she wants to say.
He has asked
Can-
for your permission.
Can you sit,
You
Honorable
allowed
member?
it.
Can
He
you-
has asked for your permission and you allowed
But
it.
it was not a point of order. Can you sit down, Honorable member? Thank you. Continue, Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Now let me deal with the real issues after. The point raised by Honorable Likota with regards to the growing debt and what happened to the borrowed money. I'm sure that it is on record and honorable members have got this at their disposal, that over the past 6-7 years, we actually have invested in excess of 1 trillion rands into our infrastructure in pursuance of exactly the policy, counter-cyclical fiscal policy, which sought to protect infrastructure, increase our productive capacity of our economy by investing in infrastructure. Protecting also, because that's where intergenerational equity comes in, because we're protecting the next generation from inheriting debt from this government without assets, and therefore building infrastructure addresses precisely that point. So if you want to know what happened to the 1 trillion rands, it went into infrastructure as an investment. So that is how debt actually was accumulated. And what we are doing now is to consolidate our fiscal position such that we are able to create space again to be able to increase our spending. Even in this budget, we continued to protect infrastructure, among other things, even when we were reducing the rate of growth of our expenditure. Indeed, Parliament has a role to play, as Honourable Van Rooyen indicated. It is through the oversight of the committee and Parliament in general that we will be able to monitor the expenditure and the money that has actually been allocated to departments in order to make sure that we get value for money. And then looking at ESCOM, again, the package, Honourable Ross, that we put together for ESCOM still stands. That package deals with all the elements ranging from the 23 billion rands, which will be realized before by end June, including the issue of the conversion of the subordinated loan, but also giving space to ESCOM to be able to utilize the guarantees that they currently hold. And if you look at all the state-owned entities, the actions that we are taking are intended to make sure that the contingency reserve or guarantees, the contingency guarantees and liabilities, as you correctly pointed out, are not called on, because it is when you build their balance sheets and their financial sustainability that you do not get into that position. Indeed, the high tariff hikes, if they can be avoided, we will. But all we are saying is that ESCOM needs to move towards a cost-reflective tariff structure, because it is then that they will be on a sustainable basis. It is actually just that being cost-reflective. The issue of the private sector participation is not only through privatization, but it is through a number of measures. We have said with our energy generation, cogeneration is one of those. IPPs is one of those, and a number of other initiatives that are being taken that seek to address the issue of government working with the private sector.
Thank you very much.
Once
Honourable
again,
Minister.
thank you, Honourable Chair, and thanks to all sane members of Parliament who have actually supported this without any
Thank you very
hesitation.
much,
Thank you.
Honourable Minister. That concludes the
Order,
debates
order,
and the
Chairperson.
business of the Extended Public
Chairperson.
Committee. The committee will now
Chairperson.
rise.
I'm calling order, adjourning the meeting. What is the problem now?